Today we're going to talk about the economy, and this information, as well as the other videos that we've watched, will be on our Chapter 1 test, which is this Friday. So be sure to take notes on this video. We're going to look at just basic economic conditions. The economy itself is when we talk about all activities related to making and distributing goods and services. Anything and everything that's related to making them and distributing them. An economist is a person who studies the economy. They try to predict what will happen in the future. This is tough to do. It's very tough to determine what's going to happen, but that's why there are research studies and people look at other items that are selling that are similar to an item that they want to sell. A lot of research goes into making sure and to predict their study accurately for what might happen in the future with their position or whatever they're buying. The market economy is the cost the market will bear, what sellers accept, and what buyers will pay in the market. It's driven by supply and demand. We looked at the banana videos, we looked at hula hoops. Those prices, that economy, that market was determined based on the supply and the demand. Remember when the children wanted the hula hoops and there were less of them available, the prices went up. So we want to take a look at how supply and demand and how they work with prices. How did the economy affect prices? The demand is the willingness and ability of consumers to buy the products and services. So if they're buying them up and that demand is exceeding the supply, then the prices will rise. You might think of something that you bought that was overpriced. Maybe way back you bought the Wii at a really high price because you were afraid there wouldn't be any more of them left and you wanted to get them. You might think about what if consumers refuse to pay those high prices? What will happen to that product? Will it die out? Will they make any money off of it? For supply, quantity of goods and services that producers are willing and able to provide. When you watched the banana video, he talked about being willing to provide them. They're willing to provide more if there's more demand. So the supply and the demand go together. They work together. Here are some examples of supply and demand items that we've gone over. Some are products like video games, Wii, Xbox, Apple products. We've talked about how Apple will control its market, control the number of items that they'll supply. They control when they release items, all part of their marketing, all part of supply and demand. Silly bands were a fad a long time ago. They created a bunch of them because kids were really using them, but now they've kind of gone out, so they may not make as many as they used to. We watched the hula hoop video. That was another example of supply and demand with a product. But I also want to mention the Y2K programmers because this is an example of supply and demand with careers, which we're getting ready to look into. If some of you are probably way too young to really remember this, but when 1999 turned into 2000, there was a lot of scare about what would happen with the computers and the programming. And so many computer programmers, were hired across the country to help work and get the computers working so that we would have no problem switching from 1999 to 2000. And when they did that, they hired a bunch of people. But once 2000 switched to 2001 and there were no more programming problems to fix, then they had to take away those jobs, and those jobs are no longer available. So that's just an example of supply and demand when it hits the job market. And I want to talk a little bit more about that because the economy can affect the prices in the job market too. In this case, the workers are the suppliers and the businesses are the demanders. The economics of the job market, again, when the demand exceeds the supply, then the wages will rise this time. And when the supply exceeds the demand, then the wages decrease and workers will have difficulty finding employment. So you want the demand to exceed the supply. You want your job to be in the demand with the job market so that you have your income rising. Recently, there was a headline about the Centra Health layoffs in the local market here in Lynchburg, and many people were laid off because the demand did not exceed the supply. So because it affects the job market, then we know that it also affects our income. In a growing economy, people will buy more goods and services, jobs will be created, and finding and keeping a job will be easier. But in a slowing economy, it would be the opposite of that. People would buy less goods and services, less jobs would be created, and it would be much harder to find a job. Some people believe that over time a local job market can catch up with the state or national job market. This could be true if that local market was surrounded by a large city or had met certain criteria, but this may not be true in some areas. Some local markets may not ever catch up with the national or state market. You have to consider the economy when you're making your career choices. You want to get into a career that will work in a growing economy, that the demand will exceed that supply. So as you're thinking about your future career and your future education, you want to keep the economy in mind. Have a great day.